The rain and Seoul didn't wash things clean. It only made the neon bleed. She stood between them, a splash of defiant scarlet against a sea of obsidian silk and charcoal shadows. To the world, they were the twin dragons, bodyguards, enforcers, the sharpest blades in the city's underworld. To her, they were the only two people she could trust, and the only two she was currently leading into a death trap. The air hummed with the electric static of the city and the faint, metallic scent of the rain. The men adjusted their gloves, the leather creaking, a sound more lethal than a chambered round. They didn't need to speak. Their presence was a wall of silence that kept the chaos of the district at bay. "Meeting is in 5 minutes," she whispered, her voice steady despite the weight of the drive in her clutch. "If I don't walk out of that penthouse by midnight, you burn the building down. No questions, no hesitation." Twin on her left tightened his grip on his lapel, his eyes scanning the rooftops for the glint of a scope. "We don't leave without you," he countered, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the humid air. She looked ahead where the skyscraper pierced the clouds like a glass needle. The game had officially begun, and tonight the house wasn't going to win. The elevator ascent was a silent, stomach-dropping blur of chrome and light. As the floors ticked upward, the hum of the city faded, replaced by the pressurized stillness of high-altitude wealth. Inside the mirrored box, their reflections were triple threats of symmetry and steel. She caught her own gaze in the polished metal. The red dress wasn't just a garment, it was a target. She adjusted the heavy, diamond-encrusted earrings that served as her only armor, feeling the weight of the twin gazes flanking her. They didn't look at her, they looked through the doors, already visualizing the layout of the floor above. "Signals are jammed," the brother on her right muttered, his gloved hand hovering near the hidden comms unit at his wrist. "We're dark the moment those doors open." "Then we rely on instinct," she replied, her voice dropping an octave as the bell chimed. The doors slid back to reveal a penthouse that felt more like a gallery than a home. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooked the rain-streaked sprawl of the city, but the interior was bone-white and minimalist. At the far end of the room, seated behind a desk carved from a single slab of obsidian, was a man whose smile didn't reach his eyes. He wasn't alone. 4 men in tactical gear stood in the shadows of the pillars, their hands resting visibly on their holsters. The twins stepped out first, their movements synchronized, carving a path for her to walk through. They didn't stop until they were exactly 6 feet from the desk, the kill zone they had practiced 1,000 times. "Late," the man behind the desk said, flicking an ash from his cigar into a crystal tray. "I was beginning to think you lost your nerve." She stepped forward, the silk of her dress whispering against the marble floor. "I didn't come here to discuss my punctuality. I came to discuss the price of your silence." The man behind the desk, a fixer known only as the architect, leaned back, his silhouette framed by the lightning flickering over the Seoul skyline. He didn't look at the drive she held, he looked at the twins. "Impressive hardware," he remarked, gesturing to the men flanking her. "But even the sharpest blades can be snapped if the pressure is applied correctly." She didn't flinch. "The pressure is already on you. The drive contains the ledger for every offshore account tied to the Port Authority. If I don't check in with my contact in 12 minutes, the encryption breaks and the data goes live to the National Intelligence Service." Room temperature seemed to drop. One of the tactical guards shifted, the leather of his holster creaking. In an instant, the twin on her left moved, not a full strike, just a subtle realignment of his stance, his gloved hand resting on his lapel. The message was clear, "Try it." The architect let out a dry, rattling laugh. "You're playing a dangerous game of chicken. You think those accounts are my only leverage? I know who your father was, I know what you're trying to buy back with that data." He slid a manila envelope across the obsidian desk. It was weathered, the edges frayed, her heart hammered against her ribs, but her expression remained a mask of marble. "Ledger for the life of a ghost," the architect whispered. "A fair trade, don't you think?" She reached for the envelope, her fingers trembling just enough for the twins to notice. The brother on her right stepped closer, his shoulder brushing hers, a silent anchor in the rising tide of the setup. "Check it," he muttered, his eyes never leaving the guards in the shadows. She opened the flap. Inside wasn't a document. It was a single, charred photograph of a house she hadn't seen in 20 years. "This isn't the deal," she hissed, her eyes snapping up to meet the architect's. "The deal changed the moment you walked in here with bodyguards instead of a white flag," he replied, his hand moving toward a silent alarm beneath the desk. The air in the penthouse snapped. The architect's hand hadn't even fully pressed the alarm when the twin on her left moved, a blur of black suit and precision. He didn't draw a weapon, he threw a heavy crystal decanter from a side table with the force of a professional pitcher. It collided with the primary light sensor on the wall, plunging the room into a strobing mess of red emergency backup lights. "Down." The twin on her right commanded, his hand firm on her shoulder as he forced her toward the obsidian desk for cover. Gunfire erupted, but it wasn't the rhythmic thud of suppressed pistols. These were high-caliber rounds, shattering the floor-ceiling windows behind them. Shards of glass rained down like diamonds, sucked outward by the pressure differential of the high-altitude storm. The wind howled into the room, whipping her hair and the scarlet silk of her dress into a frenzy. The tactical guards moved with practiced efficiency, but the twins were faster. They operated as a single organism, one suppressing the guards with rapid, short-burst fire, the other dragging her toward the service exit. "Drive," she shouted over the roar of the wind. Have it, the twin on her left grunted, sliding across the slick marble floor and snatching the device from the desk just as a bullet splintered the wood inches from his hand. The architect was gone, vanished through a seamless door in the paneling. They were trapped 40 stories up, the exit blocked by 3 guards and the storm tearing the room apart. The twin on her right looked at the shattered window, then at the repelling gear hidden beneath his suit jacket. Change of plans, he shouted over the gale. We're going out the window. She looked at the 1,000-foot drop into the neon abyss of the city. You're joking, he didn't answer. He simply clipped the carabiner to the reinforced belt hidden beneath her dress and stepped toward the edge. The wind at 40 stories up was a physical wall, screaming through the jagged remains of the window. For a heartbeat she stood on the precipice, the red silk of her dress snapping like a battle flag against the black sky. Below, the city was a blurred mosaic of neon blue and toxic yellow, thousands of feet of lethal gravity between her and the pavement. Look down, the twin on her right commanded. His voice was a calm anchor in the center of the storm. He stepped off the ledge first, his boots finding purchase on the slick glass exterior of the building. The twin on her left stayed behind for a fraction of a second, his suppressed pistol spitting silent sparks of fire toward the remaining guards. Go now, the harness jerked, and then she was falling. The sensation wasn't a drop, it was a slide. The specialized magnetic descenders in their gloves groaned as they fought the friction of the descent. Rain lashed against her face, blurring her vision as she clung to the twin's chest, her fingers digging into the high thread count wool of his suit. Every few floors the magnets would bite into the steel frame of the building, jarring her teeth with the sudden halt before they released for another controlled slide. Above them, a muzzle flash illuminated the rain. The guards were at the window. Swing, the twin shouted. He kicked off the glass, using the momentum to arc them away from the building's face just as a volley of gunfire shattered the windows where they had been seconds before. They were swinging like a pendulum over the empty air of the Seoul night. The tether hummed with the tension of their combined weight. The garage roof, 10 meters, the second twin yelled from above, rappelling at a suicidal speed to catch up. The first twin reached out, his gloved hand catching a protruding architectural rib of the parking structure. With a grunt of pure physical will, he hauled them inward, swinging them onto a concrete ledge slick with oil and rainwater. They landed hard, rolling into the shadows just as a spotlight from the penthouse began to sweep the side of the building like a predatory eye. She gasped for air, her lungs burning from the cold. The twin on her right immediately began unbuckling her harness, his eyes already scanning the row of black sedans for their getaway. Drive is safe, the other twin said, landing beside them with the grace of a cat. He tapped his pocket. But they're closing the perimeter. We have 90 seconds before this block is a tomb. The black sedan roared to life, its engine a low-frequency snarl that vibrated through the concrete floor of the parking garage. The twin on the left took the wheel, his movements clinical and fast, while the other shoved her into the back seat, shielding her body with his own as they peeled out. The tires screamed against the wet pavement, leaving charred lines of rubber as they burst through the exit gate. Outside, the district of Gangnam was a blur of electric blue and searing pink. The rain had intensified, turning the asphalt into a mirror that reflected the chaos of the chase. In the rearview mirror, 3 sets of high-intensity LED headlights appeared, low-profile SUVs heavy and armored, weaving through the late-night traffic with predatory intent. They're on the local net, the driver muttered, his eyes darting between the road and the tactical HUD projected onto the windshield. They're flagging us as a stolen vehicle. Local police will be on us in 2 minutes. Us through the tunnels, she commanded, leaning forward between the seats. She gripped the leather headrests, her knuckles white. If we hit the underground transit veins, we can lose the GPS signature. Driver didn't argue. He executed a brutal handbrake turn, sending the car sliding sideways into a narrow alleyway barely wide enough for their mirrors. Metal scraped against brick, a shower of sparks illuminating the dark corridor. Behind them, one of the pursuing SUVs tried to follow and slammed into a dumpster, the sound of grinding steel echoing through the rain. Left, the twin in the passenger seat reported, checking his side mirror. He reached into the glove box, pulling out a small metallic sphere and EMP puck. Wait for it. The car surged forward, breaking out of the alley and onto the main thoroughfare. The twin waited until the lead SUV was inches from their bumper, then dropped the puck through the cracked window. A silent blue ripple of energy expanded. The SUV's headlights flickered and died, its electronics fried, sending it spinning into a stationary bus. One more, she whispered, but as they approached the entrance to the underground tunnel, a fourth vehicle, a heavy transport truck, pulled across the mouth of the tunnel, blocking their only escape. The driver didn't slam on the brakes, he accelerated. Brace, he barked, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Instead of hitting the transport truck head-on, he swerved at the last millisecond, clipping a row of heavy plastic water barriers. The sedan launched into a controlled, violent skid, spinning 180 degrees until the passenger side slammed against the concrete pillar of the tunnel entrance. The airbags didn't deploy, they had been deactivated for exactly this kind of tactical impact. Out now, the twin in the passenger seat shouted, kicking his door open. He reached back, hauling her from the wreckage before the smoke from the engine could fill her lungs. They were at the edge of the Namdaemun night market. Even at this hour, the air was thick with the scent of spicy tteokbokki and the steam from giant metal vats of noodles. Hundreds of tourists and locals moved under the glowing plastic tarps, a sea of umbrellas and raincoats that offered the perfect camouflage. The jacket, the twin on her left commanded. She peeled off the damp, blood-stained bolero she'd worn over her dress. Underneath, the scarlet silk shimmered, too bright for the shadows. One of the twins moved instantly, stripping off his own charcoal suit jacket and draping it over her shoulders. He pulled the lapels tight, hiding the red. Walk. Don't run, he whispered into her ear, his hand firm on the small of her back as they melted into the crowd. Behind them, the heavy thud of combat boots on pavement signaled the arrival of the cleanup crew. The tactical teams were spilling out of their SUVs, their eyes scanning the height of the crowd. They wove through a narrow alley lined with hanging dried fish and stacks of bamboo steamers. The twins moved with a terrifying, silent grace, flanking her so closely they appeared to be a single unit. Every time a flashlight beam swept near them, they pivoted smoothly, using the bulky frames of the market stalls to break the line of sight. Safe house is 3 blocks east, the twin on her right murmured, his eyes tracking a drone hovering above the market's power lines. But the main thoroughfares crawled with heat. We have to go through the sublevels. He stopped at a nondescript steel grate set into the brickwork behind a pile of crates. With a sharp tug, he lifted it, revealing a ladder leading into the humming, warm dark of the city's utility veins. Ladies first, he said, his eyes finally meeting hers with a spark of grim humor. Try not to ruin the dress. The sublevels hummed with the rhythmic thrum of the city's lifeblood, massive fiber-optic bundles and steaming water pipes that glowed with a faint, artificial amber. Here, the roar of the rain was replaced by heavy metallic drip and the distant vibration of the subway lines. Clear, the twin on the left signaled, his pistol lowered but his thumb still resting on the safety. They paused in a small alcove where a rusted maintenance desk sat forgotten. She slumped against the cold brick, the oversized charcoal jacket slipping from her shoulders to reveal the torn hem of her red dress. The adrenaline was receding, leaving a hollow, bone-deep ache in its place. Drive, she breathed, extending a hand. Give it to me. Twin on the right pulled the sleek silver casing from his inner pocket. He didn't hand it over immediately. He flipped it over in the dim light, his brow furrowed. Something's wrong, it's too warm. He pressed a small recess button on the side of the device. Instead of the steady green, ready light, a frantic, pulsing violet glow began to emanate from the core. Is that the encryption breaking? She asked, her voice trembling. No, the twin on the left muttered, stepping closer. He pulled a small tablet from his tactical belt and synced it to the drive via a wireless tether. His face paled in the glow of the screen. It's not a ledger, it's a transmitter, a high-frequency beacon. She felt the blood drain from her face. The architect he didn't want to trade, he wanted us to take this. He's using us to find the safe house. Just the safe house, the twin on the right realized, his head snapping up toward the ceiling. He's using us to map the entire underground network. He's been tracking every turn we took in the market. A sudden sharp clack 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 echoed through the utility tunnel, the sound of a drone's rotors bouncing off the narrow walls. They aren't behind us anymore, she whispered, looking down the dark corridor toward their only exit. They're already here. Violet pulse on the drive accelerated, turning into a steady, mocking hum. They were trapped in a cage of their own making and the hunter was closing the door. The hum of the drive grew into a high-pitched whine, vibrating against the metal of the maintenance desk. The twins didn't panic, they synchronized. One stepped into the center of the tunnel, his silhouette a jagged shadow against the amber light, while the other began stripping wire from a nearby junction box. We have 3 minutes before the breach, the twin on the left said, his voice dropping into a mechanical, combat-ready tone. He handed her a compact tactical knife, the blade matte black and cold. If they get past us, you head for the South Line tracks, don't look back. Not leaving you, she countered, her fingers closing tight around the hilt. The red silk of her dress was stained with oil, now a warrior's shroud. You aren't leaving, the twin on the right corrected, looking up from the junction box. A spark jumped as he bypassed the local power grid. You're the objective. If you die, the real ledger dies with you. We're just the delivery system. The tunnel lights flickered once, twice, and then died. The only illumination came from the pulsing violet beacon on the desk and the glowing HUDs of the twins' tactical watches. Then came the sound, the rhythmic, heavy thud of mag boots on metal. The architect's personal erasers were descending from the ventilation shafts. Red laser sights began to dance across the brickwork like hungry fireflies. Now, the twin on the right roared. He slammed the live wire into the water-slicked floor. A massive surge of blue electricity arced through the tunnel, short-circuiting the first wave of drones in a shower of white sparks and mechanical screams. The twin on the left opened fire, his suppressed shots rhythmically punching through the darkness. The erasers returned fire, their heavy rounds chipping away at the stone pillars. She crouched low, the heat of the passing bullets singeing the air above her head. Through the strobe-like chaos of muzzle flashes, she saw him, the architect. He wasn't hiding anymore. He stood at the far end of the corridor, protected by a transparent riot shield, a cruel smile etched into his face as he watched his investment burn. Drive, she screamed over the noise. Use the drive, the twin on the left understood instantly. He snatched the violet pulsing device and hurled it toward the electric arc on the floor. The drive hit the electrified water with a blinding sapphire crackle. The violet beacon didn't just short-circuit, it detonated in a concentrated electromagnetic pulse. The surge didn't just fry the drones, it backfed through the architect's own network, shattering the tactical HUDs of his erasers and plunging the tunnel into a suffocating, ringing silence. In the sudden dark, the twins moved like ghosts. They didn't need light, they had the rhythm of the hunt. She heard the wet thud of bodies hitting the floor and the sharp, clinical snap of bone. When the emergency backup lights finally flickered to a dim, sickly orange, the hallway was a graveyard of high-tech gear and broken men. Only the architect remained, his riot shield cracked, his expensive suit scorched. He was backed against the heavy steel vault door of the utility main, his hands raised, not in surrender, but in a frantic attempt to find a weapon that still worked. The twins closed in from either side, their silhouettes identical, their expressions carved from the same cold stone. They stopped exactly 3 feet away, the kill zone once again. She stepped between them, the charcoal jacket heavy on her shoulders, her red dress torn at the thigh. She held the black tactical knife with a steady hand. "You thought the drive was the leverage," she said, her voice echoing in the hollow chamber. She reached into the hidden lining of the jacket, the one the twin had draped over her in the market. She pulled out a small, unassuming microSD card. "The drive was the bait, this is the ledger." Architect's eyes widened. You let us track you, you led us into the dead zone. Led you to the only place where your money and your tech couldn't save you," the twin on the right murmured. "The twins aren't my bodyguards, architect," she whispered, leaning in until the blade of the knife grazed the silk of his tie. "They're my brothers, and you're standing in our childhood home." She looked at the charred photograph still clutched in her other hand, the house that had sat atop these very tunnels before the syndicate leveled it for their towers. "Debt is paid," she said. "She didn't kill him, she didn't have to." The twin on the left reached past her and slammed the vault door shut, locking the architect inside the very labyrinth he had tried to weaponize. They walked out of the tunnels as the first light of dawn began to gray the Seoul sky. The rain had stopped, leaving the city glistening and quiet. They stood at the edge of the Han River, 3 silhouettes against the rising sun. "Where to now?" the twin on the right asked, finally loosening his tie. She looked at the microSD card, then tossed it into the deep, dark water of the river. The data was gone, the leverage was gone, they were finally ghosts. "Nowhere," she said, a small, tired smile touching her lips. "We're already there."